Okay, so we're at the very top of Vav Amid Bays. Excuse me, Vav Amid Aleph, 6a, the very beginning. Rava says, Meis b'yom tov rishon yisaskabo amamim, meis b'yom tov sheni yisaskabo Yisrael. If someone died on the first day of Yantif, this would include Rosh Hashanah, but it could be another Yantif, 2-day Yantif in Galus. On the first day, non-Jews should deal with him. Meis b'yom tov sheni yisaskabo Yisrael. But if he died on the second day Yantif, Jews can bury him. Well, it doesn't. That's not exactly what it says. They should deal with him. We'll see in a few minutes what they could do. Afilu b'shnei yamim tovim shel Rosh Hashanah, even on 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Masha ein kein bebeitza, which is not the same halacha for egg, because that's what we've been talking about. That for a beitza, if it was born on the first, if it was laid on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, you're not allowed to use it on the second day of Rosh Hashanah because it's long yantif. And even though, I mean, it's really one kedusha. So even though it's one kedusha in regard to Beitza, but the Chachamim will see why we're a little bit lenient in this regard to bury someone on Yantif Sheni, on the second day of Yantif, even the second day of Rosh Hashanah, even though it's considered one long Yantif in regard to um, in regard that you can't use the egg that was laid on the first day, even on the second day. But if someone died, you could bury him on the second day. Jews can deal with to bury on the second day. Naharda Amri, but in Naharda, so someone from the city of Naharda does what the people in Naharda said. Af bebeitza, even nowadays, or in their time, an egg you're allowed to, if it was laid on the first day of Yantif, you're allowed to of Rosh Hashanah, you're allowed to eat it on the second day of Yantif or even Rosh Hashanah. The Maidaitach. What was the reason that you couldn't? Why do we even have the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah? Dilma ma'abri leila Elul. Maybe Elul was going to be a full month. It was going to be a 30-day month. So Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Chodesh, and also Rosh Hashanah wouldn't have been on the 30th day of the previous month, but on the 31st day of the previous month. Ha Amar Rav Chinna Bar Kahana Amar Rav, but Rav Chinna Bar Kahana said the name of Rav, Mimos Ezra ve'elach lamatzinu elach ma'uber. From the days of Ezra, we've never found an Elul that had 30 days. In the time of Ezra, it had 30. There was once Elul that had 30 days, but it hasn't happened since then. So we don't have to worry about it. So the fact that we have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah now, according to Nahardai, is, I guess, a minhag of some sort, but because it's not really needed from the purpose of law, because there's no suffix, there's no doubt if which day Rosh Chodesh and hence Rosh Hashanah would have been. Uh, the second kedusha, it's not one long kedusha anymore. We know we just do it, I guess, as a minhag. Amar Marzutra says, Lo Amran Eladishtai. That which we said that a meis on Yom Tov Rishon, on the first day of Yantif, we could have non-Jews deal with it, and on the second day of Yantif, the Jews could deal with it. That's only if the Ishtahi. So it's going to be delayed. Avalo Ishtahi Mashinale. But if it's not going to be delayed, we just wait. So what does delayed mean? So if, let's say, Yantif started Wednesday night, so it's Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, a 3-day Yantif. If we wouldn't bury on Friday, we'd have to wait till after Shabbos. We don't do it at night now here, but there's no halachic reason not to. I guess it's union reasons, but it could be you'd have to wait till after Shabbos. So if, let's say, there would be it was warm weather, hot weather, and the body would decompose more, it's better to bury it on Friday on the second day of Yom by Jews than to uh, than to have it wait and decompose a little bit. Or if Yantif started Motzei Shabbos and the person died either right before Shabbos or on Shabbos, and so it's already been delayed and already it's maybe starting to decompose, so you could have non-Jews bury it on Sunday, on the first day of Yantif. It seems, I haven't seen that people explicitly discussed it, but Um, so according to this opinion, so when it says meis b'yom tov rishon, is meis what part of speech is meis? Are we saying meis, a dead body, a corpse, b'yom tov rishon is askable amamim? Or do we say meis b'yom tov rishon if someone died on the first day of Yom Tov? Because that would maybe be a difference of how to interpret what's going on. If the person died on the first day of Yom Tov, well, there's no ishtahi yet. It hasn't been delayed yet. But if we said that meis means that there is a dead body on the first day of Yom Tov, if it would already been delayed because of Shabbos was, well, it had to, the person would have had to have died before Yom Tov even started. But yesterday was Shabbos, so it couldn't be buried on Shabbos. So, so I think it could be depending on how we read this phrase. Is it meis Yom Tov Rishon if someone died on the first day of Yom Tov? According to that, then well, I guess we would say that this the ishtahi would mean if we wait 2 more days till after Yom Tov is over, there's going to be some decomposition already. So just bury him the first day. And meis Yom Tov Sheni, if he died on the second day of Yom Tov and we still have a Shabbos, it's not going to be delayed as much as if he would have died yesterday. But we're allowed to but Jews are allowed to bury him. Um, Primarily not, because we're going to talk about, let's say you didn't have any caskets available, or you didn't have tachrichim available, or you had to dig the grave, which are all malachos.
What about traveling outside of town?
That's also an issue, but that's probably not a diraisa. But that is, well, we'll talk about those in a few minutes. These questions.
Nowadays.
Nowadays, very few communities do this. I think the Yakis still follow this, and some Hasidic groups deal with. I've heard, but I mean, there's
Refrigeration.
what?
Well, they have refrigeration now, so maybe it's not an issue.
Yeah, but the problem is, I mean, that's partially true, but
Problem is, most cemeteries are further away nowadays.
no, not necessarily. Well, I mean, they used to be outside the city, outside the Tchum. Here, we're not saying that our cemeteries aren't necessarily so close. There is one 2 blocks away over here,
Okay, one.
but
Yeah.
but uh, but there wouldn't be Tchum problems. You don't have to leave the Tchum to get to any of the other Jewish cemeteries these days.
Well, do
New Light's also not outside the Tchum. It's not as close to our neighborhood, but it's close to some neighborhoods from neighborhoods.
do Jews in practice nowadays have non-Jews
No,
burials? No,
No.
I didn't think so.
no, but in this
I've
case,
never heard of that.
no, but in this case, it's because we can't do it because it's Yantif, so we tell them to do it, and it's like
Yeah.
Shabbos. It's a Yantif goy situation.
Yeah, maybe Yesis would do this.
I don't know if anyone holds on Yantif Rishon. They hold it for Yantif Sheni.
Yeah.
But still, there are some things you might need the non-Jews to do. There's some things. So it's not something that we really so there is a seminar Shulchan Aruch about it here. It's it's not that it's not theoretical, that it's very practical. The thing is that for whatever reason we don't do it anymore.
There'd be all sorts of other issues that was done, coordinating and.
Well, there's not much you could coordinate on Yantif. What do you mean? You can't have someone tell someone that they should have a flight to come out right after Yantif. This isn't a good enough reason to do that. Isn't it right there? Tough, something tough. Tough. We didn't cover all the issues here in the Gemara yet, but Shulchan Aruch, Taf Tzadivav, 496, the laws of Yantav Sheni. Uh, Okay, it's a separate simon. Hold on. Tav Kuf Chavav. That's what I thought. So that's the very end here. Uh, 526. Din b'meis b'yom tov. Meis hamotel kavro. So the Shulchan Aruch says we're talking about a meis, someone who's already dead, ready to be buried. Im hu b'yom tov rishon. If it's on the first day, yom tov lo yisas b'yisrael filo yisriach. Jews shouldn't deal with him even if he's going to deteriorate. The body will deteriorate. B'yafshir ba'amamim. And it's impossible to have non-Jews do it. Aval yisas b'amamim. So Jews aren't going to do it, even if the body is going to start deteriorating, and you can have non-Jews do it. Jews are not allowed. If there's non-Jews allowed, who you can, yisaskabu amamim, then the non-Jews should do it. Afilu meis bo bayom, even if he died on that day. So the way the Shulchan Aruch mentions, he mentions both possibilities of what I said of how to read it. Is it meis b'yom tov rishon that he died that day? What do we do? Or is it only if he died previously and it's going to be decomposed more? Vafilu im yachon lashos halamachos shel yasriach, even if you're able to keep him the body in a good state, that it's not going to the body isn't going to deteriorate more. On the first day, you should have non-Jews bury it. This is in regard to making the kever and the coffin and the shrouds. But to clothe him, and to warm water for the tahara, and to take him out, and to put him into the kever, mutar idei Yisrael. It's mutar even for Yisrael, even on the first day of Yantif, because these are only like muktzah related stuff. They're not, none of those are diaraisas. I'm skipping a line here. If he died on the first day of Yantif, you're not allowed to delay it to the next day so that Jews could bury it. B'Shabbos b'Yom Kippurim lo yisaskabo klal afilo yedei amim. On Shabbos and Yom Kippur, we can't have people dealing with the dead body at all. Afilo tzil yedei melonicha b'kuch hasuya me'asmo. Even to take them to let them take the body, and even to put it in a kuch is like it was like chiseled into a cave. And it had been already prepared, or it seems more likely this than the other case, or they would dig several burial plots in case they needed it. So if it was already dug, still you can't have a goy put it in. Dalit b'yom tov sheni saska b'Yisrael afilu b'yom sheni shel Rosh Hashanah afilu lo ishtay afilu after b'chaber v'lasses v'tafrich v'chaber v'lasses v'kever l'chamei mayim l'gar v'tosar. And the seventh day of Yantiv, Jews should deal with it, even if it's the second day of Rosh Hashanah, which normally, let's say in regard to Beitza, we consider it very strict and less like the first day. Even if it's not going to, there's no delay in burying him, either already or about to be, meaning let's say the Rosh Hashanah is sometimes on Shabbos, is the first day. So the second day of Rosh Hashanah could be a case where you couldn't bury him on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. But if it's Shabbos, it doesn't matter. Shabbos, where you wouldn't even allow to have a goy bury him on Shabbos. But in the Gemara, we didn't get to this line yet in the Gemara, but even to cut a hadas, they used to cut some hadas branches and put it in there, and to make extra tachrichim, or to build the coffin, or to dig the grave, or to warm up the water to do the tahara, or to comb the hair. Even these things, which the first several of them involve a diaraisa, a Jew is allowed to do it on the second day of Yantiv, even the second day of Rosh Hashanah. And if there's no Jewish cemetery in that city, you're allowed to bring it to a different city's cemetery, even if it's outside the 2,000 cubits outside the city. And you could hire a boat to take it from place to place. This is, I think, in regard to, let's say, a river. It's not going into the ocean or the sea. Because Yom Tov Sheni in regard to a dead person, the Chachamim consider it like a weekday, that we could do everything. And even if you could have non-Jews do it, no, you should have a Jew do it. Haggah, the Ramah. But in Germany and our countries, we don't. This isn't our practice. We let the goyim do the malachos, to dig a grave, to make the tachrichim, to build the things. Those are diraisas. But other things, then Jews could do. Kamo b'yont of Rishon, the same things you'd be allowed to do on the first day of Yantif. So they aren't malacha involved things. Aval imlo afshar ba'amamin. But if there's no goyim you could use on the second day Yantav, then you could have Jews do them. Besides for the cover that they put over the kever that you're not allowed to build it on Yantav. But the Ramah says you're allowed to you wouldn't be allowed to build that thing, but you're allowed to cover it up with dirt the way you could you normally do, even though some argue. But this is how the Ramah paskins. And that's when you want to bury him on the day that he died. But if you're not going to bury him that day, you're not allowed to do any malacha, even have a non-Jew. But just to move the body is allowed. So the Shulchan Aruch does discuss these things. Why we don't do it exactly these days, I don't know. When did it stop? I don't know. Okay, so back in the Gemara. Okay, so Mar Zutra said, we only say this if there's been the delay. Either, let's say the person died either right before Shabbos or on Shabbos, and now it's Yantif. So the second day of Yantif, it's already the burial's already been delayed, so it's decomposed. Or that also, but no, because then that wasn't delayed yet. Because let's say Yantif started on Sunday night. It's not Pesach, but it's a different Yantif. It started Sunday night. So someone died Sunday late afternoon. So Monday, there's been no delay yet. I mean, Yerushalayim, they try not to leave bodies overnight, but I guess why couldn't you even, according to this halacha, if meis b'yont of Rishon he's asking about Amamim, could have non-Jews bury him that first night of Yantif even. I don't see why not. Or other Jews, or have the Amamim bury him the second day. I mean, also on Monday, the first day of Yantif, but only through that's no delay. So Mar Zutra wouldn't allow that. Some Rishonim passing like Mar Zutra. Rashi and Shabbos passing like Mar Zutra. I think the Rosh passing is like Mar Zutra. The Shulchan Aruch doesn't passing like that. So some Rishonim do, but the Shulchan Aruch doesn't, and the Ramah doesn't passing that way. Rav Ashi Amar, Rav Ashi says, this is the middle of the second column on 6A1. Even if there has been no delay, we don't delay any further. If it's the first day, we bury him through non-Jews, and on the second day, the Jews bury him. My timer, what's the reason? Yom Tov Shem Gabi Meis Kol Shavi Rabbanan. The second day of Yantif, in regard to a dead body, the Chachamim made it like a weekday. Afilu l'megas le'glime, even if to make some type of cloak. So most of the Rishonim seem to say that this is not. They already have regular tachrichim to put on the body, and this is extra ones. Ulamegas le'asa, and to cut hadassim. And I don't know if it's hadassim because hadassim have a nice smell. Whatever it was, there was some custom they used to. I don't know if they. Rashi here seems to say they used to just put some branches in the aron. I think I read other places they would put hadas leaves on the eyes. So those two things are malachos, and they are not integral to the burial. But Rav Ashi is saying is that Yom Tov Sheni L'Gabi Meis is such a week they were able to do these things which are malachos, and they're not even really needed. It's the practice to do this, but if you didn't do it, the burial is completely kedas uchadin without it. Still, we're allowed to do these on the second day of Yantif. The Rush, I think, discusses how you could paskin like both Marzotra and Rav Ashi. But we don't need to know those details right now. But I mean, it would be good to. But Amar Ravina says, "Ravina de ika chavri chashina." Ravina says, but nowadays that we have chavri, we're worried about this. So chavri were a group of non-Jews, and the Jews were forced to work for them, but they would let the Jews not work on Yantif. If they would see, though, that Jews would be burying other Jews on Yantif Sheni, they say, if you do that, you could work for us on Yantif Sheni also. So in a situation like that, then we would say we do not bury on Yantif Sheni, because then it will make things worse overall to the Jews. And Tosos mentions in the time of Rabbeinu Tam, they were going to bury someone, and Rabbeinu Tam was yelling at them not to, because it wasn't the Chevri, but it was which seemed to be some Persian group, according to Rashi. No, Rashi just says they're in the name of the Persians. He doesn't say the word Persians. We're still on Vav and Aleph. That's right. Kachal Shavira, Rabbanan, and Bafila, yeah. Chavri. Just starting that. Oh, so Tosos and Bava Kama on Daf Pei Amid Beis at the bottom says that it's a disgusting thing that if a Jew would be buried by a non-Jew on Shabbos. And the Meshech Chochma in Parshas Veschanan, I think must be by the Asir Dibros, says that because that there's a difference between Yantif and Shabbos. Yantif is Zecher L'Tzias Mitzrayim. Shabbos is Zecher of the 7 days of the week of creation. So, for a Jew on the second day of Yantif to bury a Jew, it's okay. We know that the Zechat Tzedek Mitzrayim, but it's not any contradiction to that. But if someone would be buried on Shabbos, even by a non-Jew, it would be completely against the spirit of resting, because Hashem rested for creating the world. So even by a non-Jew, that's why the Meshech Chochma explains the significance of why we would not be allowed to have a non-Jew bury anyone on Shabbos. It's more of a hashkafic reason, but it makes a lot of sense what the Meshech Chochma says. The Meshech Chochma died a little bit more than 100 years ago. He was the Rav of Dvinsk, and he wrote a big sefer. So the Meshech Chochma is what he wrote on Chumash, and what he wrote, it's 2 volumes. Well, the standard edition this is the old standard edition. I mean, someone made a nice fancy one, 5 volumes with nice footnotes and stuff. And then on the Rambam, 2 volumes called the Or Sameach. So sometimes you call him the Or Sameach, sometimes you call him the Meshech Chochma. His name was Rameir Simcha HaKohen. We don't know if he had a last name. Someone once asked, you had to do a little bit of research if he had a last name or not. If it was HaKohen or not even, Cohen or not. But he was a big posek and a big Rav.
When
What?
last names didn't come in Spain until 1800.
I know that's true, but he died in, let's say, 1920 or something. Ravina Haviyasa Kamedirav Ashi, I think it gets changed to Rav Ashi. Yeah. Ravina was sitting in front of Rav Ashi, B'shnei Yamim Tovim for Rosh Hashanah, for the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. Chazei de Hava Atziv. He saw that he was upset. Amar le Amai Atziv Mar. Why is the master upset or sad? Amar le Delo Suvi Erev Tavshilin. I didn't make an Erev Tavshilin, so it seems that Rosh Hashanah was Thursday and Friday, and then it was going to go into Shabbos, and he didn't make an Erev Tavshilin, so he wasn't going to be able to make any food for Shabbos without the Erev Tavshilin. So we're going to talk about the Erev Tavshilin in the second parak. It talks about it here, but this whole sugya is in the second parak, and we'll Mir Tashem talk about it in detail over there. Amar le velosiv marhu idna. So Ravina says, why doesn't Master make the Erev Tavshilin right now? Milo Amar Rava, because didn't Rava say, Maniach Adam Eruvi Tavshilin Miyantov L'Chavero? A person is allowed to set an Erev Tavshilin from Yantav for the next day of Yantav and make a condition, meaning if so, let's say he forgot to make it on Wednesday before candlelighting. So let him make an Erev Tavshilin on Thursday during the day and cook something and say, with this thing I'm making Erev Tavshilin, if today is if today is really the Yantif, I don't so tomorrow Erev Shabbos isn't really Yantif, so I'd be allowed to cook on Friday for Shabbos. We're keeping it as Yantif, but maybe it's not Yantif. And if today isn't Yantif yet, and Friday is really the Yantif, so today is Erev Yantif, even though we're treating it as Yantif, again, because we keep 2 days, whether or not we don't know which day is the real day, or the idea is nowadays, according to most Rishonim, we do know because of the calendar of Hillel. So if today is if tomorrow Friday is really Yantif, so it's not Yantif yet, so I can make an Erev Tavshilin now before Friday, and I can cook on Friday for Shabbos. That's the proposal. Is that clear what I said? Amar le Imer damarava b'shnei yamim tovim shel galyas b'shnei yamim tovim shel Shoshana Mika b'shnei Rosh Hashanah mi Amar. So he says, okay, it's true that Rava said that about 2 days of a regular Yantif. Sukkot, Shavuos, I don't think we have 3 days of Shavuos. Pesach or Sukkot, but right, but you would only need, but it can't be Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. It can't be Thursday, Friday, I don't think. It could be Friday, Shabbos. Oh yeah, it could be Friday, Shabbos.
I think it is.
But then you don't have 2 days before. So you'd make one both days, but for that you couldn't make it because if you forgot to make it on, according to what Rava's saying, if you forgot to make it on Thursday afternoon, you couldn't make it on Friday because you don't have you can't make the condition. Because if today is really Yantif, it's too late to make the Erev Tavshilin. And if today's not Yantif, then I can cook because I don't need Erev Tavshilin. But so he only said about Shnei Yamim Tovim Shel Galyas that on one of them is a suffix, but Shnei Yamim Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah Miyamar. But did he say it about the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah? He didn't, because Rosh Hashanah we hold is one long kedusha, so there's no difference. We can't make such a condition for Rosh Hashanah. So then the Gemara asks. It seems that the Gemara is asking, but it seems that he didn't ask the question to Rav Ashi himself. Miyamar v'ha'amar nardai af beitza moteres, but nardai says you're even allowed to cook. Excuse me, to eat the egg on the second day of Yantif, that on Rosh Hashanah, that was laid on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, because we hold that since the days of Ezra, there's never been a 30-day month, a full 30-day month of Elul. It's only been 29 days, and really there's only one day of Rosh Hashanah, and there's no suffix about it. Rosh Hashanah always falls out on the 30th of Iyar. Excuse me, of Elul. So Amar le Rav Mordechai answered to Ravina, and Rashi says that this Rav Mordechai, who we had in Ksuvos, we don't have him too often, but he says he was a Talmud of Rav Ashi. So Rav Mordechai said, "Beferish Amar limar de lo savar nardai." The master Rav Ashi explicitly told me that he doesn't agree with nardai. Now, from the fact that we had this statement, Rav Ashi is we usually would pass him like Rav Ashi in something. So if Nardai said something, but Rav Ashi argues with it, we probably wouldn't pass him like Nardai. So I was thinking about it because there are certain things that in certain books they bring these things as if it's everyone agrees to it, but if you look in the Gemara, it's really not clear that we hold that since the days of Ezra we never found an Elam Ober, because Rav Ashi doesn't hold to that. Okay. So that's the sugya of meis b'yantiv sheni, or meis on yantiv, and it's also a Gemara in Shabbos around like Kuf Lamed Zayin or Kuf Lamed Tes, somewhere around there. Okay. Kuflamites. Next sugya, Amar Itmar. It was taught a farach shenolad b'yom tov, a chick that was born on Yom Tov. So it's a little bit different than the egg that was laid. But if the chick was hatched, you're in the Museum of Science and Industry for a lock-in, and the chick hatched. Can you have it on, or you're, I guess, behind Kesher Stam? I think they raised some chickens over there, but I don't know if I think those are just for the eggs, not for the chicks. Rav Amar Asher Shmuel Vitema Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mutter. Rav says you're not allowed to eat the chick on Shabbos on Yantif, and Shmuel, and some say it was Rabbi Yochanan, says you are allowed to eat the chick on Yantif. Rav Amar Asher Muktahu. Rav says it's Asher because it's Mukta. It wasn't edible before Yantif. Ushmuel Vitema Rav Yochanan Amar Mutter Holo Mater Atma B'Shchita. And Shmuel, and some say Rabbi Yochanan says it's allowed. It can become mutter through shchita. So we had this far away at the beginning on Daf Beis or Daf Gimel that something that was muktzah at the beginning, but if something can change it, then we don't say it's muktzah anymore. So even though you couldn't have eaten it before Yantif, it was in the shell, this and that, but because you could do shchita now, it removes any problems of it being muktzah, of not being available to have been eaten beforehand. So because you could shaft it now on Yantif, it may be eaten on Shabbat on Yantif, even though it hatched today. Amar le Rav Kahana Ravasi the Rav Kahana and Ravasi said to Rav, who said that it was usher because it's mukta. V'chima bein zela egel shnol b'yom tov. What's the difference between this and a calf that was born on Yantif? That according to everyone you're allowed to shacht a calf, a newborn animal on Yantif. Why would a chicken be different? So Amar Lahu Ho Lamuchan Agav Imo B'Shchita. He says because this could have been if you would have, let's say you would have shachted a cow, and inside there was a basically fully formed calf that just hadn't gone into labor and delivered it yet. You could eat that. So if you would have shachted before Yantif, you could have eaten that. So we consider it that it could have been eaten before Yantif. But it's different than the egg hatching, which hadn't hatched yet before Yantif. So since you could have shechted the mother, you could have eaten the animal. So now that it was born on Yantif, you could still shecht it and eat it. But so it's mashma from this, and the Gemara is going to talk about it explicitly in a few lines. That makes it sound like if you shechted you shechted a chicken, a hen, and you found an egg inside, you wouldn't be allowed to eat that on Yantif. Gemara is going to talk about that explicitly soon. Uma bein zela egel shnomina treifa. But then why is this different than an egel that's born from a treifa? That let's say you had a treifa cow. Let's say, I don't know, the cow had a broken leg or something, but still it was able to deliver its baby. So that cow, even if you would have shechted it before Yantif, you couldn't have eaten it because it had it has had a broken leg. It had a status of a treifa. You can't eat a treifa even if you shechted properly. Or a more common thing, I guess, would be you shechted it and you felt the lung and you felt it had a very serious hole in the lung. Not just not glatt, but it had a real hole in the lung that would make it a treifa. Now, for most of the reason I said a broken leg is because you don't usually know about the lungs unless you feel it. But if you see it has a broken leg, you know that it's a treifa, halachically a treifa. So in that case, you couldn't, if you would have shechted before Yantif, you couldn't eat it. But still, it's a davar pashut. It's taken as that there's no question about it that you could shech this cow with a broken leg that delivered a calf on Yantif. You're allowed to shech the calf. So you can't say that it's not muktzah that because if you would have shechted the mother, you could eat it then, so you could shecht it now. The shechita wouldn't work because the mother's a treifa. So Shasik Rav didn't give an answer. He just stayed quiet. So I'm a Rabbi Beitim of Yosef. Rabbi, and some say Rav Yosef says, "My time Shasik Rav. Why was Rav quiet and didn't answer?" He should have said because it's not muksa because it could have had a purpose on Yantif. If you have a treifa, what can you do with it? You can feed it to the animals, to the dogs. So muksa means there's nothing you could do with it. Here it's true you couldn't eat it, but you could have derived benefit from it and given it to the dogs on Yantif. So it's not muksa. So Amarle Abaye said, now we're turning to Vav Amid Beis. Abaye saying, no, you couldn't have given that answer. Something which is prepared for people is not considered prepared for dogs. Now, in this case, the way I understand it, muchan means the opposite of muktzah. Muktzah means it has no purpose. Muchan means it's prepared, it has a purpose. So if something is for people, it's not considered prepared for animals. Ditnan, because we learned in a Mishnah in Shabbos near the end, you're allowed to cut up squash or some type of vegetable in front of your domesticated animal, and you're allowed to cut up a nevela in front of dogs. Rabbi Yehuda says, Im lo haisa nevela me'erev Shabbos asura. If this nevela, this dead animal, was not dead before Shabbos started, you're not allowed to cut it up. Lefisha eno mina muchan, because it's not ready, meaning because it's muksa. Not that I mean you. And then I should mention now, and I don't want to get anyone super upset, but pets are usually considered muktzah on Shabbos. It's there are a lot of halachic issues if you have a pet on Shabbos. Uh, Once we had someone who was gonna become a ger, but they had a cat that was sick. I think it had diabetes, whatever. They had to inject it with insulin every day. So I think we ended up waiting until the cat died because but the cat owners are very dedicated to their pets and they're patient enough and the cat is friendly enough to let them give him the injection. And you can't necessarily find someone to come on 1 day a week to give the cat insulin. So after that case happened, or before it was resolved, I already added a question on the application, the Garris application. Do you have any pets? So we could forego any some possible issues if someone's converting if they have a pet. And then once I'm on the topic, once you had a different uh, a person once was having a panic attack a few minutes before the Garris because they're afraid of water. They don't know how to swim, and they go into the mikveh. They were terrified. So I also added, "Do you know how to swim?" Not because we need the Gerim to swim, though it is a mitzvah probably to know how to swim. It's a in after kedusha daf chavtas. Father should make sure the kid knows how to swim. But if a person is afraid to go in the mikvah, we can't have a gerus. But those two things were things where I amended our application based on situations that happened. Tales from the Beis Din. Muchen leklavim havi muchen la'ana. So from that Mishnah, it wasn't nevela before Yantif. It's not considered prepared, so it's muktzah. Muchen leklavim havi muchen la'aram. So if something was only prepared for dogs, would we say that it's considered prepared for a person? No. Meaning this animal was still alive when Shabbos started. Now, obviously, on Shabbos, you're not allowed to shacht, but it wasn't. But we didn't know that it was gonna die or be killed by something else or by a different animal on Shabbos. But Rabbi Yehuda holds because uh, because it wasn't dead before Shabbos yet. It's muktzah in regard to cutting it up for the dog. So the reverse should by a kavachomer of logic should follow that um, if something was was dog food, meaning because this cow was a treifa, visibly we knew the cow was a treifa, so it's not okay for the person to eat. And when it's a treifa, we wouldn't, if we know it's a treifa, we couldn't drink its milk either. If we don't know, we follow the rove. That is an issue. I think the CRC had someone from the kashrus department there made a podcast in the past week about that. But how in the mid '90s there was a big question: is there really a rove of cows are not trephus anymore because of the gas that they had? They were sticking needles in one of the stomachs to relieve the pressure and the pain in the cows, but by putting the needle through, that's making a hole in the stomach of a cow, that's making it a treifa. So that happened in around the mid '90s, and it seems I think I saw the CRCs they made a podcast about it within the past week. I didn't listen to it. I didn't have time to listen to it. I think Rabbi Bleich must have spoken about it somewhere in one of his books a while ago. Not one of the original 4 volumes, because it was a little bit after that. But I think, did he talk about the milk? If he didn't, if it's not in the book, he certainly discussed it in the tradition in the journal. So this cow, because it was a treifa, are we going to say that, oh, if it had a calf, the calf now is kosher and we could shacht it? No, if it's muktzah for that, it should be muktzah for us also. So therefore, Rav didn't give that answer because Rav knew that that he could have disproven their point. But but Rabbi said to Abaye, no, we could. Excuse me. Yeah, it said no. This isn't a question against how I'm explaining him because in muchen ladam lavi muchen leklavim. It's true. If it's prepared for a person, it's not considered prepared for dogs. If it's something for human consumption, you can't go and turn and instead use it for a lower level of consumption for the dogs. Something that's fit for human consumption, you're not going to give to a dog. But something that's okay for a dog is also considered prepared for a person because the daite the inish akol midi de chazile. If anything that a person is able to use, they're going to use. So what they already knew it was okay for dog. If it ends up, this cow ended up having a calf, so now it's unexpectedly, but was able to provide something that humans are able to consume. So people will use whatever they can use. So the fact that it was okay on a lower level, we're allowed to elevate. The kavachomer doesn't hold, basically what we're saying, because we were trying to make a kavachomer that if it's ready for an animal, it's not considered ready for a dog. Then it will go the opposite. If it's not okay for a dog, it's not okay for a person either. And so now we're saying no, that's not true, because something which humans could eat, we're not going to give it to a dog. But if it's something that the dog could eat, if it ends up that something is edible for a human and kosher, we will use it.
Muktzah doesn't eat.
The dog is muktzah, but still you have to feed the dog. But the question is that the dog itself is muktzah, but there's other halachos. You have to feed your pet this and that. So the easiest way around it is that you had food from before Shabbos that you prepared to give it on Shabbos. Here's the case where this animal, let's say it's in our times, it got run over. You had a pet goat, and it got run over in the street on Friday night. So it was alive when Shabbos started. It became dead now, and it's an avela. It wasn't shachted. It was killed on Shabbos. So because it wasn't prepared before Shabbos, you can't feed that to your dog. But if you prepared food for the dog before Shabbos, that was fine because you prepared treif meat before Shabbos for the dog. That's fine. You prepared it before Shabbos. This is a case where it wasn't prepared before Shabbos.
It's the same thing if you fed your cows corn and whatever, or anything and it came off of the stalk, or an apple fell out of a tree. You can't use that on Shabbos because it wasn't prepared ahead of time.
Correct.
Because that's muktzah, you can't.
But in this case, that's not exactly the same thing. It's because that we wouldn't be allowed to pick up the animal that and give it to Mr. Ed either to eat. We saw that a few blot ago, that if it fell off on the tree. But here, because you're a domesticated animal, you're cutting up this thing up in front of the behemoth. If it's going to eat the apple that fell out, you don't have to be a human shield and make sure the animal doesn't eat the apple that fell by itself. But you can't give it to it. Okay, Tanya Kavase de Rav. We have a brisa that supports Rav that a chick that was born on Yantif you're not allowed to eat, and Tanya Kavase de Shmuel v'Tamer Rav Yochanan. We also have a brisa that accords with Shmuel or some say Rav Yochanan that if a chick was hatched on Yantif, you are allowed to eat the chick. Tanya Kavase de Rav. So the brisa that supports Rav. Egel Shnol b'Yamtov Motor. A calf that was born on Yantif, you're allowed to eat it. Obviously, if you shecht it. A Frach Shnol b'Yamtov Aser. But a chick that was born, meaning it was hatched on Yantif, it's forbidden to be eaten. Why are they different? The calf is prepared, it's considered not muksa because its mother could have been shechted before Yantif, or you could have decided to shech the mother on Yantif. So so its baby can be shechted on Yantif. We saw similar svara all the way at the beginning on Dav Beis. If the chicken, one of the ways we tried to explain the question at the very beginning of the Mishnah, is this chicken a ready to eat, or if this chicken you have it only to lay eggs. So we're saying if the chicken is a chicken that you could eat because you could shecht it on Yantif, the egg that it lays, this was according to the we don't pass in that way, but that was what the Gemara was saying. Then if you could have eaten the chicken on Yantif, then the egg that it lays is also edible on Yantif because the mother could have been used on Yantif. But if the hen was the one that you only had the hen for eggs. You were never going to shech this hen. You only had it for eggs because the mother itself is muktzah. Rashi explicitly said something that comes from the mother would have the same status as the mother. Since the mother is muktzah, the egg that it would lay is also muktzah. We don't pass in that way. We hold stricter than that. But this exact logic we saw earlier. But the chick that hatches is not prepared because of its mother. And that's because it was inside a shell. And it wasn't immediately ready to eat, even if you would have shechted the mother. We have a brisa that's like Shmuel's opinion or Rav Yochanan's opinion that a chick you're allowed to shecht it on Yantif. Egel Shnol b'Yontiv Motor. If a calf was born on Yantif, you're allowed to shecht it and eat it on Yantif. V'afrach Shnol b'Yontiv Motor, and a chick that hatched on Yantif, you're allowed to eat it on Yantif. You're allowed to shecht it and eat it. My taima, why? The calf is ready to eat because its mother, you could have shechted its mother, you could shecht it. V'zeh mater atzmo b'shchita. And it's true, the chick's mother is muktzah on Yantif, but because we can shecht it now, we can undo the muktzah problem by shechting the chick, and you're allowed to shecht it. Taner Rabbanan. Okay, so it seems it's not clear from looking at this how we paskin, like Rav or Shmuel. Oh, we paskin we paskin like Rav that you're not allowed to. We paskin like Rav that the chick that hatched, you're not allowed to use it on Yantif. Afrach Shnol b'Yontiv Aser. A chick that was born on Yantif is forbidden. V'imnol b'Shabbos Aser b'Yontiv Shalachrav. And if it was born on Shabbos, you're not allowed to eat it the next day if Sunday is Yantif. You're not allowed to eat it either then. Pretty explicit and clear in Shulchan Aruch. Because I think in these Isser V'Heter things, we're usually passing like Rav, but in monetary cases, we were passing like Shmuel. Okay, Tanur Rabbanan, we learned in the Beitza, Frachshel Yom Tov Aser, a chick that was hatched on Yantif is forbidden to be eaten on Yantif because it's muktzah. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Amar Af B'chol Aser Lefi Shelo Nispadchu Einav. Even on the weekdays, it's forbidden to eat a newly hatched chick because its eyes have not been open yet. So, Kaman Azal Hadatanya. What opinion does the following brisa follow like? L'chol hasher sashoritz al aretz. So we see in Parsha Shmini, I think it is. Uh-oh. Hold on, I'll be right back. Huh? It's recording.
It's sliding off the thing.
I know. Oh. So in Parsha Shmini, creeping things, all sherets that creeps on the earth. That includes that chicks, even though they're not trutzim, if they didn't open their eyes yet, they're on the status, the same halachic status of a sheretz hasharis al aretz. So come on, what opinion does that hold? Like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov holds that the chick is a kosher animal, but until it opens its eyes, you're not allowed to eat it any day of the week. Because of this explanation, the chol hasheretz hashores includes a chick that hasn't opened its eyes yet. Amrav Huna Mara Beitza Mitziasa Nigmara. An egg, when it comes out, it's complete. So my imyitziasa nigmar, what does it mean when it comes out? It's complete. What does that mean? Ilema. If you want to say that he meant imyitziasa nigmar when it leaves the mother's body, it's considered complete, and now you're allowed to eat it with milk because if you find we mentioned it earlier, but where the Gemara is going to talk a little bit more about it right now is that we hold that chicken is fleischiks. And I'm using the Yiddish word intentionally. You're not allowed to eat, and at least on a midrabanan, you're not allowed to eat it with milk or cook it with milk. But we know that an egg is not fleischiks. An egg is parav. And you could have it with fleischiks if you want. You could have it with milchiks if you want. That's right. So what happens if you shecht an egg and you shecht a hen and you find an egg formed inside? So we paskin that egg is fully parav, even though it didn't come out yet. And there's a machlokus between the halacha and what the women held. The women were more machmer than the halacha that it didn't even need to have a fully hard shell yet. But the women were more machmer, so the Shulchan Aruch already brings it down for the Ramah. So, if you say that it's only complete once it comes out of the mother's body and you're allowed to eat it with milk, which would imply if you found the egg inside the mother yet, it would be considered fleischiks and you're not allowed to eat it with milk. But we learned in a brisa, if you shafted a hen and you found fully formed eggs inside it, they are parav, even though they didn't leave the chicken yet, the hen yet. It's because they're fully formed, they're already considered separate from the mother, and even though the mother itself is fleshix, the fully formed egg, even though it's still inside the mother, is parav. So ella or if you want to say that when it leaves the mother, then it's complete and you're allowed to eat it on yantif, implies but if you find it in the mother, you're not allowed to eat it in yantif. But it can't be that either. But we learned in the Beitza, hashochas at the girl about to basing gemores mataros ochlan b'yantiv. If you shafted a hen and you found complete egg, fully formed eggs in it, you're allowed to eat them on yantiv. So he can't prohibit those. And if you want to say that the Beitza is explicitly saying something which isn't in a Mishnah, Hanami Tanina, but we are also know this halacha from a Mishnah already. Beitza shnolda b'yantov, our Mishnah, an egg that was laid on yantiv. Beis Shammai omrim teacha. Beis Shammai says it can be eaten on yantiv. Beis Hillel omrim lo teacha. Beis Hillel says it can't be eaten on yantiv. The ad kan lo pligi Beis Shammai Beis Hillel ala benolda. That the machlokas is only if the egg was laid on yantiv, but it implies avol b'meim on divrei kol shayim. But if you shechted a mother hen and you found a fully formed egg, even Beis Hillel would allow it. The only reason Beis Hillel doesn't allow the egg is if it was laid on yantiv. But if it was found in its mother, you shechted the mother on yantiv, and you found the egg in there, even Beis Hillel would agree that you're allowed to eat it. So what's this nigmara? What's this complete egg is mutter? What's it? When was it nigmara, and what's it mutter for? The chi tema Beis Hillel afilu b'meima nami asri. And if you want to hold that Beis Hillel would hold that such an egg, you shechted the mother, the egg is still forbidden to be eaten on yantif. The high diktani noda lodecha kochan de Beis Shammai, and the Beitza, and the Mishnah says that if it was laid, is to show you the power of permissiveness of Beis Shammai, that even if it was laid, it's mutter. Afilu noda nami shari. That even if it was laid on yantif, it's still permitted to be eaten. El hadatanya. But the Beitza that just said, we already, the Beitza said, if you shechted a hen and you found inside fully formed eggs, you're allowed to eat it on yantif. Lo Beis Shammai v'lo Beis money, who would that be according to? Lo Beis Shammai v'lo Beis Hillel. That wouldn't follow Beis Shammai or Beis Hillel. So, but if you found you shechted an animal, even a hen, even Beis Hillel holds that you shechted on yantif, if you found eggs inside, you're allowed to eat that egg. Beis Hillel would only be forbid the egg once it was laid on yantif. So ella when an egg gets laid, then it's considered complete that it can become a chick. But if you would have shechted a hen and found the egg, now that egg can never be fertilized and turn into a chick. And what's the halachic significance of this statement? Im yitziyasa nigmara lemeka chumemkar. In regard to halachas of buying and selling. That if you asked to buy a fertilized an egg for chicks, and they gave you an egg that was taken out of the inside the mother, can never be a chick. We'll see that it's a mekach tos. It's a false sale, and the sale gets nullified. Ki Yehuda Amarle is someone told someone bei. Remember, bei is the same as a beitza. The ayin and the tayyid. Because we turn to zayin and aleph. Bei defachya laman, who has eggs from a live chick, a live hen. Yavule bei deshchuta. Then someone sold him eggs from that were taken from a shafted animal. It wasn't laid. They were taken from inside an animal shafted. Also coming to Rav Ami. He went to make it in Torah by Rav Ami. Amar lahu mekachtos hu v'hadar. This is a false sale, and the sale gets reversed. Pshita. Of course, it's a mekachtos. So why did Rav Ami have to say mekachtos hu v'hadar? Mao to say mahayid lachila de'boilahu. I might think that when all the guy wanted the eggs was just to eat the eggs. Mahayid de'kamer tapachya mishum de'tzriva. But he wanted eggs that have been laid by a hen because they're a little better. But he had no intent of ever having them as a we might think that he really didn't have an intent that he wanted to incubate them and start having to raise chickens. Lamai nafkamina. So what does it matter if this egg is a little bit better to eat? Either way, he's going to eat it. Lameis vele beni beni. So let the seller just give him the difference of price between the egg that was laid by a live hen and an egg that was found from inside. Kamash Malan. So Rav Ami had to say it's a makatosin, and it gets reversed. Is that the seller isn't only allowed to pay the difference of the extra price that he got for pretending to sell a chicken, an egg that was actually laid. He has to give him a full refund for the full price, and the sale gets through. Hahu da'amarhu bei dedricha laman. Someone says, who has fertilized eggs? Bei dedricha laman. Who had, so dichra literally means a dalet and a zayin flip. It means from a zachar. It means eggs from a male. Now this isn't an Anthony B. Susan chicken. It's not a transgender chicken. It means that it was an egg that was fertilized by the male. Obviously, it's from the female, but he means he wanted a fertilized egg. Yavule, Marty, you had some story about the candling the eggs, right? I remember it now, but I remember you.
For Pesach,
Oh, it was before Pesach. Okay,
father-in-law would get the case.
from the farm.
Yeah.
Yavule Bay de Safna Mayara. So they gave him eggs to Safna Mayara. So they were from the ground, meaning they were unfertilized eggs. Also, Kameder of Ami. So he came to B'din of Ami. Amrlahu Mekach Tosu Bahada. It's a false sale, and it gets to get reversed. Pshita, that's simple. So Mav the same Hailachila Kabaylahu, the same, basically the same thing we just had for the previous thing. He only wanted to eat it. V'haidik Amr the different Mishum the Shminan Tuva. It's a little bit more. It tastes a little bit better if it would have been a fertilized egg than if it would have been an unfertilized egg. L'may nafkamina. What's the halachic difference? L'meis v'lo beni beni. So the seller would say, okay, I'll give him the difference. It's 5 cents more an egg for fertilized. I'll give him the nickel back. So Kamash Malan, Sir Rami tells us that it was a makaf taos completely, and the host that he has to refund him the whole money because he sold him the wrong thing, because he explicitly asked for one thing. He shouldn't have made that assumption that he just wanted to eat it and just said it because it was going to taste a little bit better for him. So we'll leave it here, and God willing, we will continue next.